The scene begins at a busy airport, buzzing with the usual chaos of travelers rushing to their gates. Suitcases roll across the floor, announcements echo through the terminals, and people chat animatedly or scroll on their phones while waiting for their flights. Among the crowd is Justice Marcus Hall, a man whose name carries immense weight in legal circles, but who prefers to live simply when he's off the bench. Today, he's just another face in the sea of passengers boarding Flight 452 from New York to Los Angeles. Justice Hall has always believed in blending into the background during his personal time. He doesn't seek attention, nor does he enjoy the spotlight outside of his professional duties. On this evening, dressed casually in a pair of dark jeans, a navy blazer, and comfortable sneakers, he looks like any other traveler heading home after a long day. His only concession to comfort is an aisle seat toward the back of the plane, a quiet spot where he hopes to relax before landing in LA. As he makes his way down the narrow jet bridge, Justice Hall glances around at the other passengers. There's a young couple holding hands, clearly excited about their trip, a businessman typing furiously on his laptop, already preparing for meetings ahead, and a mother juggling two toddlers, her patience wearing thin as they squirm in excitement. It's a typical cross-section of humanity, each person carrying their own stories and secrets. Boarding goes smoothly until Justice Hall reaches his assigned row. As he stows his small carry-on bag, carefully ensuring it fits within the tight space, he notices the overhead compartments are nearly full. This isn't unusual for a packed flight, so he shrugs it off and takes his seat. The hum of conversation fills the cabin as more passengers file in, finding their places and settling in for the journey ahead. Some greet their neighbors politely, while others bury themselves in books or headphones, signaling their desire for peace and quiet. What Justice Hall doesn't realize yet is that tonight's flight will be anything but ordinary. For now, though, everything seems perfectly normal. He leans back slightly, letting out a soft sigh as he prepares himself for the hours-long journey. Outside, the tarmac bustles with activity. Luggage carts zip by, ground crew members signal to one another, and planes line up for takeoff under the glow of floodlights. Inside, the atmosphere shifts subtly as the final boarding call echoes through the cabin. Just as the door closes and the flight attendants begin their pre-flight routines, Justice Hall feels a sense of calm wash over him. He's flown countless times before, both for work and leisure, and there's something almost meditative about being suspended between destinations, disconnected from the demands of daily life. Little does he know, however, that this particular flight will test not just his patience but also his principles, and leave a lasting impact far beyond the confines of the airplane. The stage is set. Passengers settle into their seats, unaware of the drama about to unfold. But for Justice Hall, the next few hours will prove unforgettable, not because of the destination, but because of the events that will challenge him in ways he never anticipated. The last few passengers take their seats. The cabin buzzes with the usual pre-flight energy. The flight attendants begin their routine checks, ensuring everyone is buckled in, and that carry-on bags are properly stowed. Among them is Carla, a seasoned but visibly stressed flight attendant who has been working long hours over the past few weeks. Her face shows signs of exhaustion, dark circles under her eyes, a furrowed brow, but she moves briskly down the aisle, trying to maintain control of the situation. When Carla reaches Justice Hall's row, her attention immediately zeroes in on his carry-on bag. It's tucked neatly under the seat in front of him, but one corner sticks out ever so slightly into the aisle, barely noticeable unless you're looking for it. Carla stops abruptly, her heels clicking loudly against the floor as she plants herself next to his seat. Without a smile or even a greeting, she snaps at him, "Sir, your bag needs to be fully under the seat." Justice Hall looks up, surprised by the sharp tone. He had taken care to place the bag where it wouldn't inconvenience anyone, and this sudden reprimand feels unnecessary. Still, he remains calm and polite, responding gently, "I apologize if it's sticking out. I'll adjust it." As he leans forward to push the bag further underneath, he explains, "The overhead compartments were full earlier, so I didn't have much choice." Instead of acknowledging his explanation, Carla's frustration seems to grow. She crosses her arms and lets out an exaggerated sigh, muttering loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Why do people always wait until the last minute to figure these things out? Her comment carries a hint of irritation, but there's something else beneath it, an undertone that makes Justice Hall pause. He meets her gaze, searching for understanding. "Ma'am," he says evenly, "I'm happy to fix it, I just need a moment." But Carla doesn't soften. Instead, she shakes her head dismissively, rolling her eyes before leaning closer to him. In a voice tinged with sarcasm, she adds, "You know, some of us have jobs to do, maybe try thinking ahead next time." Nearby passengers exchange awkward glances. A middle-aged woman sitting across the aisle raises an eyebrow at Carla's harsh words, while a college student, 2 rows, up lowers his headphones to listen more closely. Justice Hall feels the tension rising but chooses not to escalate the situation. He finishes adjusting the bag and sits back, hoping the matter is resolved. But Carla isn't done. She hovers over him, tapping her foot impatiently. Then comes the comment, a remark that cuts deeper than anything else she's said so far. Under her breath, though loud enough for Justice Hall to hear clearly, she mutters, "People like you always make everything so difficult." The phrase hangs in the air, heavy with implication. Justice Hall freezes, his mind processing what she's just said. People like you. The words sting not because they're unfamiliar. He's heard similar remarks throughout his life, but because they're coming from someone whose job is to serve all passengers equally. For a brief moment, silence falls between them, broken only by the distant hum of engines preparing for takeoff. Justice Hall takes a deep breath, steadying himself. He knows better than to let anger dictate his response. Instead, he looks directly at Carla and asks calmly, "What did you mean by that?" His tone is measured, almost curious, as if giving her a chance to reconsider her words. But Carla doesn't back down. If anything, she grows more defensive, her voice rising slightly. As she replies, "I meant exactly what I said. You're holding things up." By now, several passengers have noticed the exchange. Some shift uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to intervene. Others pull out their phones, subtly recording the interaction without drawing attention to themselves. One man seated behind Justice Hall whispers to his companion, "Did she really say that?" Carla, oblivious to the growing scrutiny, continues her tirade. She gestures toward the bag again, emphasizing her point with a jab of her finger. Justice Hall watches her carefully, his expression unreadable. Inside, however, his thoughts race. He knows this moment could easily spiral out of control, but he also knows that staying composed is key, not just for himself, but for everyone watching. As the tension builds, the atmosphere in the cabin shifts. What started as a minor issue over a carry-on bag has morphed into something much bigger, exposing cracks in professionalism and respect. And unbeknownst to Carla, her behavior is about to set off a chain reaction that will change the course of this flight, and perhaps her career, forever. The tension in the cabin reaches a boiling point as Carla's frustration continues to escalate. Justice Hall, still seated calmly, tries one last time to diffuse the situation. "Ma'am," he says firmly but politely, "there's no need to raise your voice. I've already adjusted my bag and I'm not trying to cause any trouble." His words are measured, his tone steady, but Carla seems unable, or unwilling, to hear him. Instead of backing down, she takes a step closer, invading his personal space. Her face is flushed with irritation, and her body language screams hostility. Without warning, she reaches out and pushes his shoulder, emphasizing her demand for compliance. The unexpected physical contact shocks everyone nearby, including Justice Hall. For a split second, the entire cabin falls silent, the weight of what just happened sinking in. Justice Hall instinctively raises a hand, palm outward, signaling her to stop. "Don't touch me," he says firmly, his voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. The command is simple yet powerful, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Carla freezes mid-motion, her eyes wide with surprise at his reaction. Or perhaps at the realization of what she's done. Passengers around them begin whispering nervously, the unease palpable. A few people gasp audibly while others glance at each other, unsure how to respond. Someone mutters, "That was completely unnecessary," under their breath, though loud enough for those nearby to hear. Another passenger, an older man sitting across the aisle, shakes his head disapprovingly and mumbles, "Unbelievable." Carla, now visibly flustered, doubles down on her aggression. She points a finger at Justice Hall, her voice rising even higher. "You think you're special? You're causing problems for everyone here?" Her accusation hangs in the air, dripping with accusation and disdain. It's clear she's trying to assert dominance, but her actions only make her appear more unprofessional and increasingly unhinged. By this point, several passengers have pulled out their phones, discreetly recording the altercation. One young woman films from behind her seat, holding her phone low to avoid detection. Another traveler, a college student, openly records without hesitation, his camera capturing every word and gesture. They know something significant is unfolding, and they want evidence in case things spiral further out of control. Justice Hall remains composed despite the growing spectacle. He knows that reacting emotionally will only worsen the situation, so he focuses on maintaining his dignity. Leaning slightly forward, he addresses Carla directly, his voice calm but firm. "I understand you're frustrated, but your behavior is unacceptable. I've cooperated fully, and there's no excuse for treating me or anyone else this way." Carla doesn't listen. Instead, she turns toward the other passengers, attempting to rally support for her side of the argument. "Doesn't anyone see how disruptive he's being?" she demands, gesturing dramatically toward Justice Hall. But her appeal falls flat. Most passengers avoid making eye contact, clearly uncomfortable with her outburst. Some shake their heads, subtly, silently siding with the man who has handled himself with grace despite the provocation. As the confrontation drags on, murmurs ripple through the cabin. A businessman seated near the front leans over to his neighbor and whispers, "This is getting ridiculous. Why can't she just move on?" Meanwhile, a mother traveling with her children glances anxiously at the scene, hoping it won't escalate further. Everyone feels the tension mounting, acutely aware that they're witnessing something extraordinary, a clash between authority and accountability, played out in real time. Finally, Carla makes a bold declaration. "If you don't stop this nonsense right now, I'll have you removed from the plane." Her threat reverberates through the cabin, drawing sharp intakes of breath from some passengers. Justice Hall doesn't flinch. He simply nods, his expression unreadable, and replies, "Do what you must, but remember, everything happening here is being recorded." His calm confidence seems to rattle Carla even more. She hesitates, glancing around at the passengers filming her. For the first time, doubt flickers across her face. She hadn't anticipated such resistance or such scrutiny. Unbeknownst to her, this moment marks the beginning of the end of her control over the situation. What started as a minor disagreement about a carry-on bag has spiraled into something far greater, exposing fault lines of respect, professionalism, and prejudice that cannot be ignored. And as the flight crew begins to take notice of the commotion, the stage is set for an intervention that will change the course of this journey and leave lasting lessons for everyone involved. Realizing that Carla's behavior is only becoming more volatile, Justice Hall decides it's time to take action. He knows this situation won't resolve itself, and allowing it to continue unchecked could set a dangerous precedent, not just for him but for others who might face similar treatment in the future. With quiet determination, he reaches into his pocket and retrieves his phone. As Carla continues to rant, pacing back and forth in the narrow aisle, Justice Hall discreetly steps away from his seat, moving toward the front of the plane where there's slightly more privacy. He scrolls through his contacts until he finds the name he's looking for, Chief Justice Eleanor Whitmore. A close colleague and trusted friend, she's someone who understands both the gravity of his position and the importance of standing up against injustice. Justice Hall presses the call button, holding the phone to his ear as he waits for her to pick up. The soft ringing seems almost out of place amidst the chaos unfolding around him. When Chief Justice Whitmore answers, her warm voice greets him with curiosity. "Marcus, is everything all right?" she asks, sensing something unusual in his tone. Justice Hall takes a deep breath before responding. "Eleanor, I'm on a flight and something troubling has happened, he begins, choosing his words carefully. He quickly explains the situation, the aggressive behavior, the racial undertones, the physical altercation, and emphasizes that the airline staff hasn't intervened to de-escalate the matter. Chief Justice Whitmore listens intently, her demeanor shifting from concern to anger as the details unfold. "This is unacceptable," she says firmly, her voice carrying the weight of authority. "You shouldn't have to endure this kind of treatment, especially not in such a public setting." She pauses briefly, then adds, "Let me handle this. Give me a moment." On the other end of the line, Chief Justice Whitmore wastes no time. She immediately places a call to the airline's executive office, bypassing customer service lines and demanding to speak directly with senior management. When she identifies herself and explains the situation involving Justice Hall, the executives on the receiving end are stunned. They recognize the potential implications of the incident and spring into action, instructing their team at the airport to address the issue without delay. Meanwhile, back on the plane, Carla remains oblivious to the storm brewing behind the scenes. Still fuming from her earlier confrontation, she paces near the galley, muttering under her breath about difficult passengers while shooting occasional glares in Justice Hall's direction. Other passengers watch her warily, some shaking their heads in disbelief at her continued hostility. The atmosphere in the cabin is tense, with everyone bracing themselves for what might happen next. Justice Hall returns to his seat, slipping, his phone back into his pocket. Though outwardly calm, his mind races as he considers the potential fallout. He knows that calling Chief Justice Whitmore wasn't just about resolving this specific incident. It was about sending a message that such behavior, whether driven by stress, ignorance, or prejudice, cannot be tolerated. As the minutes tick by, murmurs spread among the passengers. Some speculate about why Justice Hall stepped away to make a call, while others piece together the significance of the growing tension. One woman leans over to her husband and whispers, "Do you think he called someone important? He doesn't seem like the type to let this go easily." Her husband nods thoughtfully, replying, "Whoever he contacted, they're probably going to regret messing with him." Suddenly, the pilot's voice crackles over the intercom, breaking the uneasy silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay, but we need to address an urgent matter before departure. Please remain seated and thank you for your patience." The announcement sends ripples of curiosity through the cabin. Passengers exchange puzzled looks, wondering what could possibly be happening. Carla overhears the message and freezes, her eyes widening as realization dawns. For the first time since the confrontation began, she appears uncertain, glancing nervously toward the cockpit and then back at Justice Hall. It's clear she senses that the tide is turning against her, but it's too late to undo what's already been done. Back in the executive offices, airline leaders scramble to contain the damage. They know that failing to act decisively could result in widespread backlash, not to mention legal consequences. Orders are issued to ground the plane until the situation is resolved, ensuring that justice is served, not just for Justice Hall, but for every passenger who deserves to feel safe and respected during their travels. As the reality of the situation sinks in, one thing becomes abundantly clear. This flight is far from ordinary, The announcement from the pilot sends a wave of confusion rippling through the cabin. Passengers glance at one another, their faces etched with curiosity and concern. "What's going on?" A young man seated near the window whispers to his companion. Others crane their necks toward the front of the plane, hoping to catch a glimpse of movement or hear snippets of conversation among the crew. The delay feels unusual. Planes rarely halt operations once passengers are aboard, and everyone senses that something serious must be happening. Moments later, the cockpit door opens, and the captain emerges, flanked by two uniformed security officers. Their presence alone commands attention, silencing the murmurs that had filled the cabin just moments before. Passengers instinctively sit up straighter, some gripping their armrests as they watch the trio make their way down the aisle. It's clear this isn't a routine check. The gravity of the situation is written all over their faces. Carla, who had been standing near the galley organizing supplies, freezes when she sees the group approaching. Her face flushes red, and her hands tremble slightly as she tries to maintain composure. She hadn't anticipated this level of escalation, not after what she likely saw as a minor disagreement about a carry-on bag. As the captain stops in front of her, his expression stern but professional, Carla stammers, I was just doing my job." The captain holds up a hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Ma'am," he says firmly, "we need you to come with us. There's been a complaint and we're required to investigate immediately." His tone leaves no room for argument. One of the security officers steps forward, gesturing for Carla to follow them toward the front of the plane. She hesitates for a moment, glancing around at the passengers watching her every move before reluctantly complying. As Carla disappears into the cockpit area, the remaining flight attendants exchange uneasy looks. None of them speak, but their body language conveys a mix of shock and apprehension. Some passengers begin whispering among themselves, piecing together what they've witnessed so far. "Did you see how she treated him?" A woman seated in the middle row asks her neighbor. "It was like she didn't even care who he was." Meanwhile, Justice Hall remains seated, his demeanor calm and composed, despite the whirlwind of activity surrounding him. He knows the airline is now taking the matter seriously, thanks to Chief Justice Whitmore's intervention, but he also understands that resolving this issue won't be quick or simple. When one of the security officers approaches him, Justice Hall greets them politely, offering a concise yet detailed account of the events leading up to the confrontation. He speaks clearly, avoiding any hint of exaggeration or emotion, ensuring his statement is factual and unassailable. Passengers nearby can't help but overhear parts of the conversation, and many nod approvingly as they listen. "He's handling this so well," a college student mutters to his friend, admiration evident in his voice. Others continue filming discreetly, capturing not only Justice Hall's explanation, but also the reactions of those around him. By now, dozens of videos have been uploaded to social media, sparking discussions online about racial bias and workplace conduct in the aviation industry. Back in the cockpit, Carla is questioned by airline representatives brought in specifically to address the situation. They ask her to recount her version of events, but her answers grow increasingly defensive and disjointed. At first, she insists she was merely enforcing safety protocols, but under further scrutiny, cracks begin to show in her story. Confronted with video evidence provided by passengers, she struggles to justify her actions, or the inflammatory comments she made during the altercation. Outside the plane, airport staff work quickly to manage the growing crowd of curious onlookers, gathering near the gate. News of the grounded flight spreads rapidly, prompting speculation about what could have caused such a disruption. Reporters arrive within minutes, eager to uncover details of the incident. Social media platforms light up with hashtags like Justice for Hall and Pla's accountability in air travel, amplifying calls for transparency and fairness. Inside the cabin, tensions remain high. Some passengers applaud quietly when they learn that Carla has been removed from duty pending an investigation, while others express frustration over the extended delay. A businessman types furiously on his laptop, drafting an email to his colleagues explaining why he'll miss an important meeting. Families with young children grow restless, unsure how much longer they'll be stuck on board. Despite the chaos, Justice Hall remains focused. He declines offers of compensation or upgrades from airline representatives, emphasizing that accountability, not perks, is what truly matters. His quiet resolve inspires respect among those around him, reinforcing the idea that standing up against injustice requires courage and conviction. As the hours pass, it becomes clear that this flight will leave a lasting impact, not just on those aboard, but on the broader conversation about equality and professionalism in everyday life. What started as a routine journey has transformed into a powerful reminder of the importance of treating others with dignity and respect, regardless of their background or status. By the time the airline executives arrive at the gate, the situation has spiraled far beyond anything they could have anticipated. Dressed in crisp suits and carrying tablets loaded with crisis management protocols, they step onto the plane with an air of urgency that commands immediate attention. Passengers crane their necks to catch a glimpse of the newcomers whispering among themselves as the executives make their way toward Justice Hall's seat. One of the executives, a tall man with graying hair and a practiced smile, introduces himself with a firm handshake. "Your Honor," he says, his tone respectful but tinged with nervousness. "On behalf of the airline, I deeply apologize for what you've experienced today. We're here to ensure this matter is resolved promptly and appropriately, Justice." Hall nods, his expression calm but unreadable. He listens patiently as the executive explains the steps they're taking. Carla has been suspended pending a full investigation, and additional staff are being brought in to handle the flight. However, Justice Hall isn't interested in empty apologies or superficial fixes. In a measured voice, he responds, "I appreciate your efforts, but let's be clear. This isn't just about me. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels safe and respected, regardless of who they are." His words resonate deeply, not only with the executives, but also with the passengers eavesdropping nearby. A few nod in agreement, while others exchange approving glances. Meanwhile, Carla sits in a small conference room near the terminal, her hands clasped tightly together as she faces questioning from human resources representatives. At first, she attempts to downplay her behavior, insisting she was simply stressed and overwhelmed by the demands of the job. But when shown video footage recorded by passengers, footage that captures every harsh word, dismissive gesture, and racially charged comment, she begins to falter. Her excuses grow weaker, her defenses crumbling under the weight of undeniable evidence. Back on the plane, tensions ease slightly as the replacement flight attendants take over. They move through the cabin with genuine warmth, apologizing individually to passengers for the disruption and offering complimentary refreshments as a gesture of goodwill. While some travelers accept the offerings graciously, others remain skeptical, wary of whether these actions represent real change or merely damage control. As the new crew prepares the plane for departure, the executives sit down with Justice Hall for a private discussion. They assure him that the airline takes incidents like this very seriously and outline plans to implement stricter training programs focused on diversity, inclusion, and conflict resolution. Justice Hall listens intently, occasionally interjecting, with pointed questions about accountability measures and long-term commitments. Training sessions are important, he says, but they mean nothing if they aren't enforced consistently. Word of the incident continues to spread outside the aircraft, fueled by videos posted online and live updates from reporters camped out at the airport. Social media platforms buzz with reactions ranging from outrage to admiration. Some users praise Justice Hall for standing up against injustice, while others criticize the airline for allowing such behavior to occur in the first place. Hashtags like Justice for Hall and Bias in Air Travel dominate trending lists, sparking debates about systemic issues within the travel industry. Passengers disembark briefly during the delay, stretching their legs and grabbing snacks before returning to the plane. Conversations abound as people share their thoughts on the unfolding drama. One woman remarks to her husband, "It's sad it took someone like him, a Supreme Court judge, to make them listen. What happens to regular people who face this kind of treatment?" Her question lingers in the air, unspoken but understood by those around her. When the flight finally departs hours later than scheduled, the mood inside the cabin is subdued yet reflective. Many passengers feel a mix of relief and frustration, grateful the ordeal is over but troubled by its implications. For Justice Hall, the experience serves as both a reminder of the challenges fake. By the time the plane touches down in Los Angeles, the story of what happened aboard Flight 452 has already gone viral. Social media platforms are ablaze with reactions, opinions, and debates. Videos captured by passengers have been viewed millions of times, sparking outrage, admiration, and calls for accountability. News outlets pick up the story, running headlines like "Supreme Court Judge Stands Up Against Racial Bias on Plane" and "Airline Faces Backlash After Incident with Prominent Passenger." Within hours, the airline's customer service lines are flooded with calls from concerned travelers demanding answers. The public response is a mix of emotions. Many applaud Justice Hall for his composure and determination to hold the airline accountable, Online forums buzz with praise, with users highlighting how he handled the situation with dignity despite the provocation. One commenter writes, "This is why we need leaders like him, people who stand firm against injustice without losing their cool." Others share personal stories of similar experiences they've faced while traveling, expressing solidarity with Justice Hall and gratitude that someone with influence has brought attention to the issue. However, not everyone agrees. Some defend Carla, arguing that her actions were driven by stress rather than prejudice. A few online trolls accuse Justice Hall of making a mountain out of a molehill, claiming he should have simply complied instead of escalating the situation. These comments, though outnumbered by supportive ones, underscore the deep divides in how people perceive incidents involving race and authority. The debate grows heated, with both sides presenting passionate arguments about fairness, professionalism, and systemic bias. In response to the backlash, the airline releases a carefully worded statement acknowledging the incident and pledging to take action. They announce that Carla has been placed on administrative leave, pending the outcome of an internal investigation. Additionally, they vow to implement mandatory diversity training for all employees and establish a hotline for reporting discriminatory behavior. While these measures are steps in the right direction, critics argue that such initiatives must be more than performative gestures. They need to lead to real, lasting change. Justice Hall himself remains largely silent in the days following the flight. He declines interviews and avoids engaging directly with the media frenzy surrounding the incident. Instead, he focuses on his work, continuing to uphold justice in the courtroom, while privately reflecting on the broader implications of what happened. When asked by close colleagues if he regrets taking such a public stand, he responds simply, "Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always necessary." For the passengers who witnessed the confrontation firsthand, the experience leaves a lasting impression. Some reach out to Justice Hall via social media or letters sent to his office, thanking him for inspiring them to speak up when they see unfairness. Others recount the incident to friends and family, using it as a teaching moment about standing up against prejudice. Even those who initially sided with Carla begin to reconsider their stance after watching the video evidence and reading analyses from experts about racial bias in everyday interactions. Meanwhile, the airline scrambles to repair its damaged reputation. Executives hold press conferences promising transparency and accountability, emphasizing their commitment to creating a safe and inclusive environment for all passengers. Behind the scenes, however, there's tension among staff members. Some feel unfairly scrutinized due to Carla's actions, while others recognize the need for introspection and reform within the company culture. The incident forces uncomfortable conversations about privilege, power dynamics, and the importance of treating every individual with respect. Conversations that ripple far beyond the aviation industry. As days turn into weeks, the story begins to fade from the headlines, replaced by newer events clamoring for public attention. But its impact lingers. For many, the incident serves as a wake-up call, a reminder that discrimination can occur anywhere, even in seemingly mundane settings like an airplane. It also highlights the courage required to challenge injustice, whether you're a Supreme Court judge or an ordinary citizen. Though the flight may have ended, its legacy continues to unfold. The lessons learned about accountability, empathy, and the ongoing fight for equality are ones that will resonate long after the wheels of the plane touched down. And for Justice Hall, the experience reinforces his belief that true progress often begins with small, courageous acts of resistance. In the weeks that follow, the ripple effects of the incident on Flight 452 continue to unfold, leaving an indelible mark on everyone involved, and many who weren't. For Justice Marcus Hall, life returns to its usual rhythm of court sessions, legal briefs, and quiet evenings at home. Yet the experience lingers in his mind, not as a burden but as a poignant reminder of the work still needed to create a more equitable society. He doesn't seek recognition or praise for standing up against injustice. Instead, he channels the energy from that day into his ongoing efforts to advocate for fairness both inside and outside the courtroom. The airline, meanwhile, undergoes significant changes in response to the public outcry. Mandatory diversity, Training becomes a cornerstone of their employee development program, with workshops designed to address unconscious bias, effective communication, and conflict resolution. Executives tour various hubs to meet staff face-to-face, encouraging open dialogue about the challenges employees encounter daily. While some workers embrace these initiatives enthusiastically, others remain skeptical, questioning whether this is genuine progress or merely a temporary reaction to bad press. Only time will tell if the changes stick, or if they're forgotten once the spotlight fades. For Carla, the aftermath proves life-altering. After a thorough investigation, she is terminated from her position due to her unprofessional behavior and failure to adhere to company policies regarding respect and inclusivity. Struggling to find employment in the aviation industry, she begins reflecting on her actions during those tense moments aboard the plane. At first, she resents the outcome, convinced that she was unfairly singled out. But over time, through conversations with friends, family, and even former colleagues, she starts to see things differently. She enrolls in counseling sessions to better understand how stress and implicit biases influenced her decisions, vowing to grow from the experience rather than let it define her. Among the passengers, the incident sparks meaningful discussions about privilege, allyship, and accountability. Some take inspiration from Justice Hall's composure and resolve, using the story as a teaching moment in their own lives. A teacher incorporates the event into a lesson plan about civil rights, asking students to reflect on what they would do if faced with similar circumstances. A young professional shares the story with her coworkers, igniting a conversation about workplace dynamics and the importance of speaking up when something feels wrong. Even those who initially defended Carla begin to reevaluate their perspectives, acknowledging the broader societal issues at play. Social media remains abuzz long after the initial headlines fade. Online communities dedicated to combating discrimination use the incident as a case study, analyzing what went wrong and brainstorming ways to prevent such situations in the future. Hashtags like "You Stand Up for Justice" and "Your Bias-Free Travel" gain traction, uniting people across the globe in shared calls for change. The viral nature of the event highlights the power of technology to amplify voices and hold institutions accountable, a double-edged sword that airlines and other service industries must now navigate carefully. Back at the airport, subtle shifts become noticeable. Passengers report friendlier interactions with flight attendants who seem more mindful of their tone and demeanor. Behind the scenes, airlines implement stricter protocols for handling disputes, ensuring that confrontations are de-escalated promptly and professionally. These changes may not be perfect, but they represent a step forward, a recognition that every interaction matters and that systemic problems require sustained effort to address. As for Justice Hall, he occasionally reflects on that fateful night, remembering the faces of the passengers who stood silently by or recorded the altercation. He thinks about the woman across the aisle who raised her eyebrow in disapproval, the college student who filmed the exchange without hesitation, and the older man who whispered, "Unbelievable." Each of them played a role in holding accountability to light, proving that change often begins with collective courage. Ultimately, the story of Flight 452 serves as a powerful reminder that no act of injustice exists in isolation. It underscores the importance of treating others with dignity and respect, regardless of setting or circumstance. And while the journey may have been turbulent, its destination is one of hope, a world where standing up for what's right becomes less extraordinary and more commonplace, a shared responsibility carried by all.